I do believe people are sunlight deficient, but then when you also realize that the vast majority of the solar spectrum is infrared, again, if you're sunlight deficient, you're infrared deficient. And so it makes sense.
Scott Chiveri, Mito Red Light. I'm so glad to connect with you. And we're going to throw down an important podcast about all manner of red light therapy and cutting edge red light associated products, because you're the go-to guy.
Thank you for saying. I'm very excited to talk to you today.
So I think we could start back in, what was it, 2019, when you started to get the wheels moving and your total immersion into this world of red light therapy. And I'd love to know how, what the inspiration was to get Mito Red Light started. And then, of course, we'll transition into the science and the health benefits. But it is a pretty amazing story of, you came from a disparate career and then started getting more and more focused on health, I guess, and take it away.
Yeah, I would say, well, the genesis would certainly be my own health challenges. I think I suffered with a lot of health challenges, like many people, bad acne, insomnia, just depression and anxiety, which are two sides of the same coin. And so I dealt with those. Initially, I dealt with those in unhealthy ways through drinking and and other ways. And then I just you reach a point where you have to make a decision, like how I can't keep doing this, like it's the definition of insanity. So doing the same thing over and over, expecting something different to happen, right? So I got very interested in health and wellness in my late 20s. And then this is when biohacking was starting to, almost 20 years ago.
Mm.
And biohacking was kind of in its infancy. And so started to solve my own problems. The orthodox medical establishment really wasn't much of a help. So in most of these issues can be partially, if not fully, addressed through lifestyle interventions. Just better diet, better sleep hygiene, etc. And so I went down that rabbit hole and learned a lot. And got interested in all sorts of different interventions and modalities. And then eventually red light got on my radar, probably in 2015, 2016 or so. So I started using, red light. And two things I noticed, I actually started using it for testosterone. I was, about 40 at the time and was concerned about declining testosterone, but it is a big problem, actually. We're not the men that our grandfathers were. Right. And because of all of the environmental issues, et cetera. So, I was using red light for that, but then I noticed that I was sleeping a lot better. And I really just started to fall in love with my red light device. And then so maybe a year and a half goes by of using it. And I decided, I was spending too much time and I wanted more red light in my life. And then when I went to buy another device, I got sticker shock. They were very expensive at the time, like a 3-foot panel, $1,300 or something. And so I just was in denial about it. I just refused to, because a couple of years earlier, I spent maybe $800, right? And so now the price is $1,500. And it's like, why? I mean, they're just LEDs. I wonder if, I can build something that's as good for a lower cost. And it turns out that I could. And so that was really the genesis for the company in 2019. And we had a very basic products back then, just red and near infrared light, no bells and whistles, no fancy electronics, just very bright, powerful light. But much lower cost. So that was the genesis of it. And now obviously, and we're almost 6 years in and we have a huge product portfolio that's grown a lot as we see as we learn about the marketplace, and we seek to address, where there are gaps.
So you started with the ambition to increase your testosterone, and is that a research validated strategy? And how are you doing it? You're exposing your ball. I say in the Mito Red Light commercial, every morning I expose my eyeballs and other important balls to the red light panel. Is that the ticket?
Yeah, so I wrote an article in late 2019. Could getting jewels on the crown jewel decrease your testosterone? A double entendre there. Jewels. First jewels is spelled Joules, which is the measurement of light intensity, and the crown jewels is kind of self-explanatory. And so there is data in mice, and actually pretty compelling data that and they I, if I'm recalling the study, it was about a week. They used red or near infrared light on the crown jewels of mice, and they saw massive increases in testosterone. Humans, I think, are a little bit more complicated, especially hormones. There's feedback loops and there's a lot of other uh, issues going on, and so we have anecdotal feedback from a few customers who have, actually had blood work done before, then used the lights on the crown jewels, and then 6 to 8 weeks later, tested and saw increases. But in both instances, the gentlemen were quite low. I think one guy was 250, and the other guy was like 325, and they got up into the normal range, 500s and 600. So it wasn't. So those are a couple anecdotes that we have. But I think in general, when we'll talk about this in terms of like how red and near infrared light work, they help the cells make energy, they help cells function better. So if the root cause is that the crown jewels are sluggish for whatever reason, then potentially I think it could be beneficial. But if there's a different root cause, let's say too much exposure to xenoestrogens or whatever, then I don't know that it would do much, right?
Testosterone replacement therapy doesn't do much if you have adverse health practices and poor metabolic health, including visceral fat. You'll aromatize the extra testosterone into estrogen. So I like your position coming into the biohacking world, knowing that a lot of this is the responsibility to be the best you can be, and then use the red light panel as a tool. But it just occurred to me when we're talking about this, like we're talking about the thinnest, easiest to penetrate skin probably anywhere in the body. And so knowing the scientific research that the wavelengths are designed to penetrate the skin and in fact do, it seems like a very good part to focus on if you're doing targeted red light therapy.
And is you do more full body red light therapy and just make sure that you're doing it in your birthday suit, and then obviously we want to get the light there, but my general advice is to get the largest device that you can within your budget so that you can shine the light on as much of your body as possible.
So what was the sleep benefit? Like, what was your strategy there? Were you doing this in the evenings to wind down? What do you think was happening to your circadian rhythm with the red light treatments?
So I don't know if it was a circadian improvement in my circadian biology, or if it was an increase in melatonin. Because there is more and more in the scientific literature, we're seeing discussions of infrared radiation in particular increasing extrapineal melatonin production. So there's a really good paper, I could send it to you. It's a 2019 paper in the Journal of Melatonin Research, I think, by Russell Ryder and Scott Zimmerman. And they're putting forth that 95% of the melatonin in your body is actually not made by the pineal gland. It's actually made in the cells in response to infrared radiation exposure. And the thought process is that the infrared radiation goes into the cell, spins up ATP production. This is one primary mechanism for how we think that red and near infrared light has benefit is by increasing ATP. But there's no free lunch. So there's an increase in ATP. There's also an increase in oxidative stress. Oh. And so the thought is that in response to that increase in oxidative stress, the cells in the mitochondria upregulate melatonin production within the cell to put out the fire locally. And so the thought is that we're exposed, our ancestors would be out in the sun all day, getting these beneficial wavelengths of infrared radiation, and would be creating this massive reservoir of melatonin throughout the day. And then when the dim light onset melatonin from the sun setting gets excreted from the pineal gland, essentially it's spared. It doesn't have to go out, doesn't have to travel throughout the body to put out fires. It can be available to help you fall asleep. And so that, I believe, is the mechanism for how I and others report that they sleep much better when they use Retinir light. And there's also a couple studies. I mean, there's one study I always like to reference in elite Chinese female basketball players.
Mm-hmm.
They used 30 minutes of red light in the early evening, and then they did subjective sleep quality scores, and they were much higher. But they also measured serum melatonin the next day, and it was 2/3 higher. So something's happening there.
Yeah, we only have 200,000 years of research with humans living, but it's an important point that you made where until very recently, we spent most of the day in the sun, and until very recently, we spent our time near the equator. So we've had these massive shifts in humanity, even though it was 15,000 years ago that we, finished populating the entire globe, including the polar regions where we didn't get much sun. Most of our life experience and our evolution has come under the beating sun of Africa. So that taken away, I think, is a highly undervalued aspect of trying to regain our humanity. With short of spending all day out in the sun, now we have a way to, I guess, is this some of the most beneficial aspects of sunlight packaged in the panel and focused on those proper wavelengths? Is that what you're doing with the panel?
Yes. Well, first of all, I completely agree with you. I do think that the sunlight deficiency is a massive public health problem. So I would say, if you're not doing well, and I know this personally too, when I was suffering with depression and anxiety, I believe that I was also living in upstate New York at the time. It was very gray. So even when I had the opportunity to be outside, the sun was hard to find. People, and seasonal affective disorder is a thing. And I certainly experienced it myself. So I purposely moved to Phoenix 11 years ago to have much more sun, which we do have plenty of here. And so totally agree that we need to spend more time outside, writ large. Like the population at large should be spending more time outside. And then, yes, what we do with red and near infrared light is we take these very beneficial wavelengths, generally between 600 nanometers, which is the wavelength, and that's kind of a red-orange, up to 900 nanometers, which goes into near infrared, which is invisible. And we're able to deliver a very high amount of that light to the body very safely and in a reasonable amount of time. And so I view it as supplementing the safest parts of sunlight, again, in a very safe manner.
Yeah. So the safest and most beneficial parts of that UV spectrum are helping with mitochondrial function, cell repair, removal of waste products, that kind of thing.
Yeah, the safest parts of the solar spectrum. So UV is part of the solar spectrum, but arguably less safe because it's higher energy light. So just as a quick primer, you have the solar spectrum, you got ultraviolet light, which is invisible, 200 to 400 nanometers. UVB makes vitamin D. Then you get into visible light, which is the light we can see. So Roy G. Biv through the high school.
If you don't have elementary school kids, Roy G. Biv is a prominent educator in the first through fourth grade category. And you want to share the acronym for all those parents out there that want to teach more?
Yeah, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
Right. He's written a lot of books. He's showing, you'll never forget his name, Roy G. Biv. Rainbow Town is where I live. That was the book we read.
Awesome. And then when you get above red, you get into infrared, which is divided into near, mid, and far, and is also invisible. And actually, 54% of the solar spectrum is infrared. Only 39% is visible, and only 7% is UV. So when you're, I always like to call that out because I do believe people are sunlight deficient. But then when you also realize that the vast majority of the solar spectrum is infrared, again, if you're sunlight deficient, you're infrared deficient. And so it makes sense to supplement.
It would probably be almost everyone in the developed world, I'd say.
You're a postal worker or UPS driver or landscaper, perhaps not. But I think the vast majority of folks are like us. We're inside in front of the PC. Even even though, and you and I are probably very mindful of this, and probably have a more of an ancestral bent, and we know that we should be outside. Still, probably struggle to be outside. I know personally, if I'm outside an hour a day, at the high end, and it's just the nature of the work that I choose to do.
And I'm familiar with the vitamin D potential where you have to have the peak times of solar intensity during the day and during the year, and during the winter months where you live. If it's Arizona, it's only a few months, but if it's in upstate New York, we're talking about a nice chunk of the year where there's no vitamin D potential whatsoever. And is that does anything like that apply to the infrared spectrum?
Well, so what you said is true in that ultraviolet light, it needs to be a certain intensity, or even the UVB wavelengths to reach you, and to make vitamin D. And in the northern latitudes in the winter, it's just not strong enough to make vitamin D. So you're going several months without even the ability to make vitamin D from the sun. So it's just something to be mindful of. I think we're designed to make a lot during the summer. And then if we are, if our ancestors are from northern latitudes, we make a lot from the summer, we store it. It's a fat soluble vitamin, we store it. And then that's supposed to kind of get us through the winter. Mm-hmm. So I think that's, ancestrally, I think that the vitamin D story gets a little complicated, because I do think that we're designed to actually have peaks and valleys, and that's fine. But the problem is that most people aren't getting the peak in the summer.
Right? Just the valley, man.
So they're just having a valley all year long, and then the valley in the winter can be very problematic.
Oh, so, it's fascinating. I'm thinking of this anecdote from, I think it was in the book, The Vitamin D Solution, but humans cannot survive above the 60th parallel on the globe. So that's all of Scandinavia, Canada, areas like that, because the vitamin D potential is so low. And so the only reason we were able to populate those areas was the huge vitamin D possibility in the diet through eating all the oily cold water fish.
So that which goes to show how important it is. And also, but one of the things that I like to stress, though, is, so we can survive, but can we thrive there? I guess my question, because when people say they're vitamin D deficient, I don't think that they're vitamin D deficient. I think that they're sunlight deficient, because that's really the root cause of the vitamin D deficiency. So, and again, I think that so the UV story is part of it, but the infrared radiation is also a big part. And to kind of circle back on the point you were making earlier, the nice thing about infrared radiation is that if the sun is out, you will be exposed to it.
Even in a winter day in Stockholm, as long as you're getting direct light.
Yes, absolutely.
It doesn't have to be intense.
Even indirect, because so infrared, so here's a good hack. Like if you're worried about photoaging of the skin and you don't want to be in direct sunlight, go to a green space, sit in the shade, because the infrared light reflects off of green. And so that it will literally come down from the sun, bounce off, let's say, the green grass and up, and you would still be exposed to copious amounts of infrared radiation. Indirect. You don't even have to be directly in sunlight.
What if it's brown dirt, or you don't have?
So I haven't actually tested. I would imagine there is some reflection, but I know that green in particular, and you can with infrared cameras you can pick this up, and I've also measured it with a meter. It's actually pretty fascinating. You can point the meter up at the sun, and obviously it measures quite high. But you point it down at the green grass, and it's pretty significant actually. So it's a good hack, because I know folks are concerned about photoaging of the skin. It's in a hurry to get wrinkles, and so they may not want to be outside for hours, but you can still get the benefits of infrared radiation without direct sunlight.
As well as getting a treatment in front of the red light panel, which is not going to photoage the skin, if I understand that right.
Right. If anything, there's a lot of great data on improving skin improvement fine lines and wrinkles, increase in collagen production, elastin. So there's a lot of good data. Because again, we're taking the parts of the sun that are super beneficial, that are increasing mitochondrial activity, and we're stripping out the parts that can cause the UV parts, which can cause photochemical damage, and the far infrared and mid infrared, which can cause the heating, which can which can cause thermal damage. So we strip those out, and we just have the parts that boost the mitochondria, and so you do see a lot of good skin benefit.
Thermal damage, you mean sunburn, outside sunburn from the sun?
Well, typically the sunburn is from UV, and that's it's high energy light, and it damages the skin just because it's high energy light. One of the ways I like to describe it, like high energy, short wavelength high energy. If you think about CrossFit battle ropes, it's such a good analogy, right? So if you want the crests and the battle ropes to be close together, you have to put a lot of energy into the system. So high energy, short wavelength, longer wavelength, lower energy. You could just go take it easy, do longer, have much longer distance between the crests and the waves. And that is, infrared light or mid and far infrared light. So lower energy, so less dangerous. However, mid and far infrared do get absorbed by water and turn to heat in the body. So that's where there could be concern with the excessive temperature creation in the body. And that's why when we go out in the sun, it feels warm. That's exactly what's happening. The infrared radiation is going into your body, and it's getting absorbed by water and turned to heat.
So obviously, at some point, it's counterproductive. You're going to get too hot if you stay in the sun all day and start to feel lousy and lose some benefit.
Yeah. So, right. The dose is everything. Although I do think, again, we're designed to be able to be out there quite a lot. And I actually think that part of the issue is that we're living inside these modern caves, and we're just not used to bright light. Now, I know you've asked me about the eyes in the past, and we do recommend the goggles, but I think part of the reason people will, and this happens without fail when we have visitors come in and we show them like the big panels, turn it on, and everybody's just like, wow, that's bright, right? I mean, it's a visceral reaction. But I think part of it is just we're just not used to bright light. Like we're just not, because we're inside. Like even now, I've got pretty good lighting in here, but the actual like lux or lumens is probably 1/100th of what it is if I were to walk outside. Right. So we're just not used to being exposed to the amount of light that we should be, and I think that we just become much more sensitive to it.
Interesting. I thought it was my blue eyes that made me more sensitive than a brown-eyed person, but I can see that big picture too, where if we're obsessed with wearing sunglasses all the time at the instruction of the ophthalmologist, we're gonna lose out on some of those benefits and become more fragile, I suppose.
I do agree with that. That's it. Sunglasses is an interesting one. I do not wear sunglasses unless I know I'm going to be outside for several hours. Then I will. I may don a pair of sunglasses. But for the most part, if I have my afternoon walk, there's no sunglasses for the 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm out there walking. There is something, for it can be cumulative damage to the eyes from ultraviolet light, that can manifest over decades. So I do think there is something, to protecting the eyes from extended exposure. But again, we're designed to be able to handle it, stuff. And especially if we're getting the infrared as we should, I think the eyes can be quite healthy.
Yeah, I suppose if we were joined by an ophthalmologist next for the next segment of the show, we could get some safe warnings and counter opinions. But I really follow Ben Greenfield's simple recommendation. He says, if you are strained, put on sunglasses. But if you're not strained, you don't obsessively have to throw them on. And I laugh at people at 9:15 in the morning and they're busting out their sunglasses, and I think that loses some of your melatonin potential. To go back to what you were talking about with our ancestors, we need that light exposure all day to prompt the dim light melatonin release at night.
Here's what's interesting too. There's actually the circadian story. I think most folks are aware of, at least now, right? Because we've got folks like Huberman and folks like yourself explaining to people, hey, it's a good idea actually to go out and get first light, reboot your circadian rhythm, so your body knows what time it is. It's also a good idea to avoid blue light after sunset because it's confusing to the body. You're telling your body it's noon when it's 8 o'clock at night. That's not a good idea. I think those messages it makes sense, and they've been out in the ether for a while. So I think most folks are kind of aware of that. But on the sunglasses tip, there is actually melanopsin or rhodopsin. These are these signaling molecules in the eyes, and when they're exposed to ultraviolet light from the sun, they actually upregulate melanin synthesis in your skin. So what that means, kind of the short story of that is that if you wear sunglasses, you actually are more likely to sunburn.
Scott said it here first, people. Does everyone follow that? So if your eyes are exposed, you're going to upregulate the melanin, which is the tanning agent that protects you from burn. And if your eyes are covered with glasses or shaded,
that signaling doesn't happen, and so you would be more likely to burn. So
of course, why would it happen? It's not that bright out with your sunglasses on.
Right, and right, and so it's just fascinating, right? Like, and again, it's just the more I learn about these things, just the more ancestral bent I have. It's something as innocuous as sunglasses. You just say, okay, well, it's probably good to protect the eye. And I'm not saying that it isn't, from hours and hours of exposure, but there's always a cost, and the cost, and at least one of the costs that we know is that you're blocking the signaling that goes to the skin that says, hey, there's UV light. You probably want to upregulate your melanin and get that going, and you're interfering with that natural protective mechanism. So it's just something to be mindful of.
Yeah, that's really wild. I've also known where you buy the cheap sunglasses without the UV protection, and so it's shading your eyes from the sun.
That's the point.
But your pupils are dilated inside because of the shading, but there's no protection. So it's worse for your eyes to wear crappy sunglasses than it is to just squint and deal with it, which is kind of scary too.
Yes, that's a problem.
But back to the red light panels. So we know that spending too much time in the sun is going to be counterproductive. We can't handle it, whatever. And then there's a optimal treatment, time and frequency with your red light therapy. So walk us through some of those suggestions if you can.
Sure. I think one like a good analogy for red and near infrared light therapy routine or practice is to think of it as exercise. It is a stressor. It is a hormetic stressor. So more isn't necessarily better. Just, running a marathon every day probably isn't the best. But regular moderate exercise is probably a very, very good thing for 99.9% of the people. So a similar concept, there's only so much energy that the cells can absorb in a setting anyway. So we usually recommend, about 10-minute sessions, and also just based on the power density of our lights. We know they're putting out anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 joules per square centimeter per minute. And when we look at the data, most applications, you want somewhere between 5 joules to, say, 60 joules. That's anywhere from 2 minutes to 20 minutes. And so, we recommend about 10 minutes for kind of, regular maintenance. Some folks may want to do it more. They may use it and just feel that they feel better the more that they're using it, in which case I would recommend breaking it up and maybe doing a 10-minute session in the morning and a 10-minute session, late afternoon, early evening. Similar to how you were going to do 2-a-days if you were an athlete, you would break it up, have give a little bit of time in between. So that's, again, it is a hormetic stressor. And so there is such a thing as a U-shaped response curve. And so just, using it for hours isn't necessarily going to be a good idea. You would see diminishing returns, if not at some point, negative returns.
What is the mechanism by which it's creating a hormetic stressor to the cells?
So again, it does increase ATP, and it actually at the molecular level, what it's doing is it's taking cytochrome C oxidase, which is this chromophore light absorbing molecule, which is needed to make ATP, and it's bound. So cytochrome C oxidase in the mitochondria can bind with either oxygen or nitric oxide. And it needs to bind with oxygen to finish making ATP or cellular energy. But if it's bound with nitric oxide, it can't. So the leading hypothesis or theory about exactly how this works is that the red and near infrared light literally vibrates cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide are bound together. When that's hit with red and near infrared light, they're vibrated apart. You have more free cytochrome C oxidase available to bind with oxygen to make ATP. And we observe this because we see an increase in ATP and we see an increase in nitric oxide. But nitric oxide is a free radical. So nitric oxide it's an interesting topic because it's actually a free radical, and in like the exercise sphere or in other, perhaps even in the bedroom, we kind of champion nitric oxide, for its impacts, right?
Yeah, for blood flow
you don't necessarily want a lot of nitric oxide in the mitochondria competing with oxygen to bind with cytokine. So it's all about context, and it's about having the right amount of what you want in the right places. So anyways, so it does increase oxidative stress by unbounding nitric oxide, which is a free radical. And so that we think increases, in turn, increases melatonin production. And it also, through what's called retrograde signaling from the mitochondria back to the nucleus of the cell, upregulates other anti-inflammatory and antioxidant pathway. So it has a downstream anti-inflammatory effect, but it has an acute increase in oxidative stress.
I guess that's the same category as a sprint workout, a cold plunge, or things that provide an appropriate stressor or stimulation, and then the body responds by coming back stronger, making more ATP energy.
That's all about, right? I mean, all of these things, so the dose matters, right? Like, and for me, I'm a big fan of minimum effective dose, right? So I'm in the cold plunge, but I'm in there a couple of minutes max.
Wow.
I used to do 40, I used to do 38 degrees. Now I'm up to 50. I've actually made it easier on myself because psychologically, I was having trouble getting in the first place. So again, some of that, this is a whole nother topic, but what is the minimum effective dose for cold plunge? Yeah, but I think 50 degrees, 2 minutes is plenty. So same thing with light. Our lights are very powerful, and I don't, generally speaking, 10 minutes is a good dose of light.
Makes sense. It seems like you know your stuff, Scott. I think listeners would have to agree that you're in the right game here. What was your career before you got into red light?
I was actually in finance, believe it or not.
Right. It was completely unrelated. Yeah, amazing.
I've always gravitated towards strategy, chess, poker, and then trading and markets. I'm super fascinated with the market. So I got an MBA 20 years ago, and had a career in finance, and it was okay. But what I'm passionate about is health. What I'm passionate about is feeling good, right? I mean, that's where it all starts. So making money is fine, but what is it without your health?
Mercy. Yeah. It's pretty tragic to even reflect on that for a moment, because once you have a health challenge, everything else gets put into perspective for you for the first time, perhaps slapped in the face about it. Yeah.
How about I've so many times I've seen, maybe it's just part of our culture, but people trade their health in their actions day to day. They trade their health for dollars, and it's a bad trade. It's never a good trade. And
Yeah,
so,
dollars or instant gratification, and like you described with your story, I remember hearing this take about alcohol, that it's so destructive. But one of the experts, I think it was on a podcast, said actually it's extremely effective for dealing with anxiety, stress, depression, whatever, and it works instantly and it's extremely effective. It just has really destructive long-term consequences, but it's an interesting way to categorize it because that's why they're so all the substances and diversions are so popular is that they work as promised. They just don't make any promises about the next morning and the rest of your life.
right. So for me, um, I'm super thankful for those struggles. I mean, because they're what led me to find solutions. And so yeah, I don't really know that there's like a big takeaway from that other than if you're going through something difficult, just know that like on the other side of it, like it will serve you in some way. Right. And so I do think uh, all of the stuff that I went through and all of the mistakes that I made and all of the challenges, they were actually necessary to get me to where I was at to be able to do what I'm doing now.
Well, that's a great way to look at it, man. I mean, it's not you don't necessarily adopt that perspective. You had to work to get there, I suppose.
Oh, certainly. And and certainly when you're in the thick of it, you don't think like that at all. I mean, it's very, why me? Why the hell,
Oh yeah.
why is this happening to me? But then you realize looking back that, um, it, it is what it needed to be. And so I'm super thankful. Now I happen to be in the light business, but taking, all of the challenges that I went through, that my family has gone through, and taking it and using it as a fuel to create things that hopefully are gonna benefit you.
There's light at the end of the tunnel. Incredible. You mentioned your interest in finance, markets, all that, but I also see you as this inventor guy because every time I visit headquarters, you got crazy new stuff going on that you can't even believe some of this stuff. And I know probably some you're not allowed to talk about, but could you open the curtain for a little bit in the inventor's corner there at headquarters and some new stuff that's coming out? I mean, the water bottle's already out, so I'd love to hear about that and what else is cooking.
So we have the Mito Hydro. I think I have to get you one of these. So it's a hydrogen water bottle. I mean, hydrogen water is something that, I mean, there's a lot of good data on it, and it's very simple how it works. I don't know if you're familiar with how it works, but there's, through a process of electrolysis, it separates the hydrogen and the oxygen in the water into hydrogen gas. So it's this free hydrogen gas. So you run it for 5 or 10 minutes, you drink the water, the hydrogen gas diffuses very quickly into your system. It's small hydrogen gas. It goes right in. And then it floating around, and it's looking for hydroxyl radical, OH,
In your body?
which is a very problematic free radical in the body.
Mm.
And so very damaging. So there's OH floating around, and then when this free hydrogen finds the OH, turns it into water. H plus OH is H2O.
Wow.
So it just, and water is okay. So I neutralizes it. So that's essentially how it works. So I had learned about it actually several years ago, and it used to be that you had to have either these very expensive machines or these tablets that you had to drop in the water. And I used them, but I didn't like how they tasted, and then plus you had to keep buying tablets. And then, but the technology advanced where we could put it into a water bottle, and I'm super proud of this because it's very well built. It's IHSA certified, so it's one of the best bottles on the market, even though it's outside of our core competency, which is red and near infrared LED lighting. Um, we just thought it would complement, what we're doing. So we decided to build it. So that I'll get you one. You can try it out. Let me know what you think. We've got a skin serum that we're working on, which again, outside our core competency, but we're heavily researching what would you want to put into a skin serum to enhance the skin benefits of red light.
Mm.
And so there are a couple of studies on green tea and using green tea on the skin before red light. I'll send, if you're curious, I'll send it to you. It's pretty amazing. This one study, they use green tea bags on like kind of the crow's feet area here. They just literally steep green tea bags and then just put them on the area for about 20 minutes. And then they use red light. And so they had a group where they did that and a group where they just used red light. So both groups saw improvement, but the group that was pre-treated with the green tea, it was incredible. Like the before and afters were incredible. And the hypothesis is that the antioxidants in the green tea are buffering some of the oxidative stress. And so you're getting more of a net benefit from using the red light. Because again, there's no free lunch. You're increasing ATP, increasing oxidative stress, so your body has to deal with that. So if you kind of precondition the skin with some antioxidants and they're available, then the hypothesis is you're going to get more of a net benefit. So that study was pretty amazing. And then we did a product study in Poland a few years ago. We partnered with a skincare company. They used a green rooibos extract, very high antioxidant. And that study showed very good promise. Again, two groups. That study we did split face. So half the face serum, half the face didn't. And then they just compared each side. And the side they got, both sides saw benefit across all metrics, but the side where we preconditioned with the antioxidant serum had more of a benefit. So we're taking that and some other very interesting studies, and we're working very hard to think about what kind of serum we can, a before serum to use. So many of our customers use red light for skin.
Right.
So I'm really excited about that. And we've got our first. Actually, I have a bottle here, but this isn't anywhere near on the market.
If you're watching on video, Scott is showing one of his top secret bottles. And also, if you're watching on video, you'll notice Scott has no wrinkles whatsoever. There's no crow's feet to speak of. So something is working with that red light therapy and the top secret serum. Almost 50. He's just like a new man here in the desert.
Actually, I have to say your skin is pretty good too, my friend. So
I've been working on it. I'm in front of the panels for 5 years now, and I do think that some of these things are very possible to reverse or improve if you didn't have your A game on before for previous decades. Of course, we didn't have this sort of technology, but it's exciting to try to reach for our potential at whatever age.
Totally agree, and I will tell you, my hair. I've grown some of my hair back. I'm now 49, and my hair started thinning about 16 years ago. And I started using the laser helmet about a year and a half ago. And it has been a slow change. It hasn't been a miracle by any stretch. But the before and afters on our site are my bald head and less.
You can see his bald ass head right there on the homepage. And I've seen the helmet. Is that commercially available, or is that one of your fun inventions?
It is. I just finished the session right before we jumped on.
Right. So it looks like if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it looks like an ordinary, BMX helmet or something, and you put it on, and so you're getting a concentrated dose of the red and the near infrared, the same visible and invisible spectrum.
It's actually only red. The data.
It's red. Okay.
660, but these are.
If you're not watching, you're missing out on a great show because he's wearing the helmet now, and his head is now aglow with a nice red glow coming out of the helmet. But you look like you're ready for the skate park.
That wouldn't work out well. I can't skateboard.
So again, when you're putting the helmet on, or you're standing in front of the panel, or using a handheld, a smaller panel, you're going to get an appropriate exposure to the skin to generate all the benefits without overdoing it, I suppose.
Helmet's only 12 minutes.
12
12
minutes. Yep.
minutes and every other day. Right.
Okay.
That,
Right.
the data is pretty compelling on hair growth.
So you're stimulating that healing response from the every other day 12 minutes, and your hair's going to work in between.
Yes, and we also we already came out with the hair mist. So we just launched this actually. This was took a year of research, and I love this stuff. It has peppermint oil in it, and it just gives this wonderful cooling. And you don't need it, but
Huh.
I started my hair was been thinning for 16 years. This beautiful cooling sensation on the scalp. It's just I love putting this stuff on. Maybe it's because also it's so hot, and it's just this very nice cooling feeling on the scalp. I'm
So
excited about this too. We're gonna do some studies on this. It took a lot of research, but I'm very
mm,
proud of the formula, and I'm proud of how it's working.
can't wait to see that as part of your offering. Yeah. And now back to the water bottle. How does it work? Do you put regular water in and somehow it gets treated inside the canister?
That's right. I would recommend like RO or filtered water, just clean water if that
Start
works.
start with something good, people. Okay. Yeah.
And then all you have to do is well, I don't have water in here, but you just you push the button and it runs, and there's actually little bubbles that come up from the bottom. There's a membrane, and it's just electrical current actually that when it hits the water, it separates hydrogen and oxygen, and it fills the water with hydrogen gas. And then all you need to do is drink it.
So I guess that's what we're purchasing when we see the very expensive bottle at a, boutique store of some kind. They've done that treatment, and now you can do it yourself in a handheld device.
Right. Multiple times a day. I do drink 2 to 3 bottles a day.
Um,
But yes, I mean there used to be very expensive machines, and I won't name any brand, but the one I'm thinking of from Japan that's been around for a long time. And that was the only way that you could do it. So to be able to put it into a bottle that's travel friendly, that you can just run multiple times a day, um, it's super convenient.
well, that sounds super exciting. I can't wait to try it out. I think we're going to do a special promo for listeners that want to try the new bottle, as well as a light panel. We have the standing discount code, which is Brad on mitoredlight.com. That's mito like mitochondria, redlight.com. We've put up some great videos where you're explaining some of the the benefits of red light, and so I encourage people to look at those. But I really appreciate this discussion. It really helps get further education about what's happening, because I know people that just stand in front of it on faith, but if you start to understand how important light is and how we run on um, light, water, and that's how we make energy, you realize it's kind of important. Yeah.
It's arguably the most important thing, although admittedly I'm biased, but we really get back to basics, right? I mean, just
Mm.
get light. You don't necessarily have to buy a device. However, I think if we're being honest with ourselves, we know that if we try our best to get outside, it's still very difficult with other responsibilities to be outside as much as we would like. And it's just a super convenient way to supplement. And the nice thing about LED technology is that the lights should last a very long time. There's no planned obsolescence. Like those devices, properly cared for, they should last many, many years. I have devices that I've sold into gyms where they do workout classes all day underneath. They put them on the ceiling
Yeah.
and they do workout classes all day. So the lights are on 8 hours a day. And I'm with one place I'm thinking of. They bought those like 5 years ago, and they're still just going strong. So LED tech is really amazing. It's the wave of the future. We just need to be smart about the wavelengths and the power intensity that we use in the LEDs and tune it more to our biology. And I think that we can, it's kind of my pet project is I'm working on a ambient lighting solution, which is going to have, it's not going to be the junk light, just the blue and green light that all of the LED lights are. It's going to be in tune with our circadian biology. going to have red, it's going to have infrared, but it's going to be super energy efficient. And that's really where we need to go.
Uh, right, because I guess we're transitioning over to LED in typical home use for ambient lighting, but there's some offensive aspects to getting blasted by that light all day with your can lights or whatever, right?
Yes. So there are two problems. One is the flicker,
Mm,
and same thing with the screen. So that it's an artifact of alternating current because the LEDs essentially, if the current goes on and off, I mean they do turn on and off. With incandescents, that artifact of alternating current is muted because the incandescent, you're heating a filament inside the bulb, and it takes too long for that the filament to cool down. So
yeah.
you don't just flicker really in an incandescent bulb. But with an LED, there is, and it basically flickers. The light's turning on, off and on 120 times a second. It's not perceptible. It's just
Right.
above what we can perceive, which I think is 100 hertz. But it is like a stressor. And especially sitting under that for 8, 10, 12 hours a day, it's a minor stressor to your eye. And so that's the first thing we have to get rid of. We have to raise awareness of and get rid of in ambient lighting is the flicker. But the other bigger issue, in my opinion, is that the LEDs that are used for ambient lighting, they're essentially blue and they're essentially blue LEDs. But so typically you can create white light, what we perceive as white light, by using a blue LED and using a blue LED with what's called a yellow phosphor, which is just a yellow coating, which yellow and blue makes green. So it's blue and green, but that green, there's enough yellow and orange that comes out of that second LED where our brain perceives that as white,
Uh-huh.
but it's not real white light. It's really blue and green light that our brain is perceiving as white, and it's lacking in cyan, which is the split
Wow.
part between blue and green,
Mhm.
and it's massively lacking in orange and red, and of course in infrared. Uh, and so which we would be getting from the sun. So where we need to take that is we need to create indoor lighting products where we add back in the cyan and we add back in a proper amount of red, and I would argue even a proper amount of infrared, because we just spent the last hour talking about how infrared is super beneficial for the human body, and yet we've stripped it from all of our indoor lighting in the name of energy efficiency. Incandescent bulbs do put out a certain amount of infrared, and they work from black body radiation, which is essentially how the sun would. So even the incandescents that we used to have, let's say in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, in our homes, we were still getting some infrared from those, but now those are gone. We're living outlaw. And so now all we're left is this very foreign blue and green LED light, which is flickering, and it's junk light, and it's horrible for our biology. It's we need to fix that, and that's actually what I'm going to be working on for the next couple of years, is try to figure out how we can build LED lighting that's more in tune with our biology and try to bring it mass market.
That could be a slightly large market opportunity when we're talking about indoor lighting for humans.
Billions, it's billions, and I just can't. It's really strange to me that I haven't seen anybody really actively working to solve that problem. And it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem, and it's a huge market. So I don't understand. But so I'm going to do my best from my small corner of the world I'm actually working on a desk lamp. That's how I'm going to start.
Mm.
But, all of these can lights and every office and factory, worldwide needs lighting that is, congruent with our biology.
So are you saying now on the market there's no acceptable solution, that all the LEDs are flickering, imperceptible flickering, and I guess you can get incandescent lamps and things, but there's no good option right now?
The incandescent lamps are harder and harder to get.
Oh,
You have to buy them like like it's novelty. Uh, you
oh,
know, and, so I mean, I actually have a halogen lamp over there that's kind of like my little sun, but they're harder and harder to get because of energy, because of the regulations around the energy consumption. Because
oh,
they do create heat, so they are inefficient in that sense. In that a lot of that electrical energy is turning into heat.
yeah.
That's where LEDs shine, pun intended. In that they're super efficient, and they're super and the longevity.
Right.
They last forever. We just need to have better design. So the problem with LED is solved by more LED. But we just want to add in the parts of the spectrum that are currently missing from the LED products on the market for ambient lighting. So if we could add in, use the blue and green, but we should add in the cyan, and we should add in some red, and we should add in some near infrared, in my opinion, even though it's invisible, because it's not about just the lighting, it's about your biology. Now we can create kind of an indoor version of the sun that's super energy efficient, and really take it to the next level. The composition of wavelengths should change depending on the time of day. So that's also part of it, right? So we're honoring our circadian biology. More red and near infrared in around sunrise and sunset, and there should be a lot of blue around midday, because that's what happens in nature. Mm-hmm. So that needs to happen, and so I'm working on it. Eventually, I would love to get Elon Musk or somebody on to at least understand why this is a problem.
Yeah.
And I think that has a potential to change the world in many positive ways, because I don't really think people understand that they feel like crap because of the light that they're exposed to all day.
I think you could call the company Indoor Sun.
Okay, we can workshop names.
There we go.
Right now, the lamp is, I'm calling it the biorhythmic lamp. That is kind of a competitive name for it, but.
So, because I'm in the midst of relighting and remodeling our house, the LEDs are touted as having this cool setting where you can go from white down to more yellowish or something. And how does that layer into your discussion of the flickering? And do you know what I'm talking about? Where you can set it on.
That's an improvement if you're able to at least go like to a warmer temperature.
Yeah.
But I doubt that they're engineering the flicker out.
And the same for computer, yeah.
And certainly they're probably not adding in the cyan, which is what you want for true melanopic heat. So the sun is full spectrum. It isn't just this blue and then this green, right? Yeah. So we may not think of cyan as being important or having important biological effects, but the bottom line is that we would be exposed to the blue, the green, and the cyan if we were out in the sun. So to just expect it is suboptimal. And also, really where we need to take it is we need to put some more red and some infrared in. Because you wouldn't be out, anytime you're out in the sun, you're exposed to infrared. So it is foreign to our biology to be exposed to light without infrared.
Right. That's why the blue light is so disruptive.
Partially. And so it's probably one thing that people should understand a little better. It's okay to be exposed to infrared and not UV from it, because that happens in nature all the time, right? Like, and it happens in Scandinavia in the winter.
Yeah.
There's no UV, right? But there's infrared. But you would never be exposed to light without infrared.
Right.
Unless you, again, the modern environment.
Unless you pick up your phone at night. Yeah.
Right. And so there's so much opportunity to improve. It's a huge market opportunity. We just have to get the awareness there. I think, you can create a product and try to create the demand, or you can try to create demand and then create the product. I think we need to do both in this regard.
Okay, I'm gonna sign up to be your first interview when you launch the new outdoor simulated lighting for your home. That's going to be cool. Now, do you do like the biohacker style at your house where you switch over to red light panels as your sole source of light, or other sort of?
I have this. This is
looks like a small donut shaped light. People, if you're watching on YouTube, it's like a desk lamp. And is that is that red colored? I couldn't really tell.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
I love it because it's battery powered, and so these are in every bedroom in the house.
Wow.
It's battery powered, so it doesn't flicker. So it's right, you don't have to worry about any flicker. But also, I turn off the power to my bedrooms at night before I sleep, and so I still have a light that works because it's battery powered. It's charging in the USB all day, and then it's got like a 12-hour battery. So
yeah.
So I love these, and so I'm a huge fan of these. And we do sell these on the site. It's only $50.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll last you forever, and it's not going to jack up your sleep because it's only red light.
Love it. Scott Chiveri. We're going to call this the Light Show, I think. It was fantastic. We covered a lot of different stuff, more than I even bargained for. I learned so much. I appreciate your time, and hopefully the listener agrees that we got a great education and inspiration here. And I definitely direct you to go visit mitoredlight.com because the articles are extremely informative, and there's a ton of information to learn there, as well as looking at all the amazing array of products. You've only mentioned a few cool ones, but it's high tech, people, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working hard to continue to bring new things to market. I've got so many other things on the hopper. Really excited for the next few years. And just trying to make a positive difference and do cool stuff.
Scott Chiveri, everybody. Thanks for listening.